The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. To start with today's episode, we are going to go all the way back to 1906 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That is where a wealthy black landowner by the name of O.W. Gurley purchased land for the express purpose of creating a community and business area for the black residents of Tulsa. That neighborhood was now known as the Greenwood District, otherwise known as Black Wall Street because of the relatively affluent nature and successful nature of the black-owned businesses that resided there. This neighborhood and its history were sort of brought back into the national consciousness a couple years ago when the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa race riots of 1921 were recognized. And the history and the spirit of this particular neighborhood continued to live on, not just in the Greenwood District itself, which is still thriving in Tulsa, but also with various other avenues such as Greenwood Whiskey. Now, Greenwood Whiskey is made in Atlanta, but the owners, 4 of them, did decide to celebrate Greenwood, the district, and its moniker as Black Wall Street, and its vision, its continued vision of being a beacon for black-owned businesses around the country. And that's one of the reasons why the founders of Greenwood Whiskey, including their CEO, Kweillin Gordon, otherwise known as KG, decided to name it after this particular neighborhood. And we actually sat down with Kweillin from his home base in Atlanta to talk about not just the Greenwood District, but also creating a whiskey brand, what it means to be a black-owned spirit in a very underrepresented marketplace, and the future of what Greenwood Whiskey is going to have. It was a phenomenal interview. Definitely cannot wait to bring you this amazing story. So we're going to sit down with KG, Kweillin Gordon, CEO of Greenwood Whiskey. Enjoy. It's interesting that this is actually not the first whiskey brand that we have had on the Florida Beer Podcast that has celebrated a great historic black community here in the United States, which I find amazing and I absolutely love. So before we get into the whiskey itself, I'd like to talk about Black Wall Street. I'd like to talk about the Greenwood District and a little bit of a primer to that story.
The Black Wall Street District, the Greenwood District, it was a district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, roughly 40 acres that housed over 500 African-American owned businesses. It was founded by O.W. Gurley and J.B. Stratford in early 1906. So this is a time frame where, you know, as the African-American in the U.S., you didn't have many rights at all, but they built a community where they wanted to empower because a lot of the African-American community have many options as far as resources, shopping, and so forth. So they built a community where everybody can come together and they can spend $1 and just build, you know, and work with each other. And that's the exciting thing, because like that story of entrepreneurship, when there really wasn't a model, it was in essence O.W. Gurley stating that, hey, you know, I have an opportunity here with this land. You know, I'm going to be intentional about helping others build businesses and build our economy, you know, together. So that was one of the things that definitely excited us when we heard that story. because it's something that even today is still attempted to be, to be duplicated, where the idea of group economics and, and building for yourself. So that was a story that definitely touched our heart.
And it's interesting, especially since they've been in the news, to remember the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa race riots in that district. Being in Atlanta, that you and your team are based there, was it odd to want to celebrate and bring attention to this area that's literally in another time zone?
Yeah, no, it wasn't odd to us. Like I have family in Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was the place that I visited on a regular. And I think like that, the story kind of transcends state, time zones, and anyone else. I think it's an American story that should be heard by everyone. And unfortunately, the story hasn't been heard by. I mean, even people in Oklahoma, they haven't heard the story. That's not something that they regularly teach in school. So we've seen it as an opportunity to share a great story and honor a group of entrepreneurs in the community that came before us. So we weren't necessarily tied to geographical locations.
So which came first, the need to do something to celebrate the Greenwood District, or the desire to create a whiskey? And how did you sort of marry the two concepts together?
So the whiskey came first, right? So we had the desire to create a whiskey. It was one of those things where I've been in, me and my business partners, the co-founders, we've been in corporate America for some time now and had a lot of different roles, but nothing was truly fulfilling, right? And we wanted to do something that we actually enjoyed doing, that was fulfilling to us, but also we wanted to have a message. We wanted to share some information, with others. So that's where the name came into it. Like we could have just did a whiskey, of four brothers, four guys coming together and doing a whiskey, but we wanted to have something much more substantial than that. And we wanted to, highlight others that inspired us. So that's where we married the Greenwood whiskey into it. But the whiskey came first. And especially for us, being that we are in Atlanta, like we can go out to establishments and, and we see diversity everywhere across Atlanta. But that same level of diversity wasn't behind the bar when we looked behind the bar.
I remember seeing a story because you went to a favorite establishment of yours, and while the establishment was Black owned and all of the employees were Black, that was not present in the bottles that you saw of the drinks on the menu of that particular establishment.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just that establishment. It was like many establishments in the area. And then when you dig deeper, especially into whiskey, and, I've been consuming whiskey for some time now, and there wasn't like truly a brand that spoke to us, that we felt that spoke to, my group of friends, our demographic. So, instead of complaining about, the lack of diversity, we said, hey, let's do something about it and create, a whiskey brand to diversify the industry, the portfolio, and then taking it a step further by, honoring, African-American contributions.
And what steps do you have to take to create a whiskey brand? Because, obviously we have a lot of breweries that are on the podcast, and that's quite an undertaking in and of itself. But to create a spirit, especially creating a spirit company from scratch, that is, I would assume that would be quite an ordeal.
Absolutely. And honestly, it's a lot harder than what I thought it would be. Like at the time, sometimes like ignorance is bliss, and we were like, how hard can it be? None of us had any food and beverage experience. My background is finance, real estate. My partner's an attorney, logistics. So it was a wide range of experience, but none of it was in food and beverage. So for us, we were like, how hard can it actually be? We can make this work. In reality, it's extremely hard. So like we had this concept in 2018, and we didn't hit shelves until November 2020. So during that time frame, it was a couple of options. Hey, we can build a distillery from scratch, start out, or we can partner with a distillery in place and lay down, and we can work with having create our own recipe and do our own juice in essence. So we chose the latter. As coming into it, we were like, hey, we have to find a distillery that's willing to partner with us, and we can jointly create a great product. Now, that's a task within itself. Like literally, I knocked on close to 100 doors, just telling the same story. Like, hey, this is the story. This is how we're going to differentiate it. This is the idea we have around the juice. And it took a long time, but we finally got one. We got one, a distillery that was willing to partner with us at the time. and because they just seen the vision and they liked the direction that we were going.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it was a story of resilience, to say the least. I heard a whole bunch of no's.
That is unfortunately such a common theme, especially nowadays. And were you happy with the partnership that you were able to strike? Because obviously making product is one thing, but having somebody that shares the vision of the background and what you're trying to achieve and being able to work with you to help you achieve those goals, that's a far greater task.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think initially we were just excited that somebody understood our vision and was willing to partner with us and help us produce a product. Initially it was a good partnership. I mean, we pivoted rather quickly because just from a business standpoint, we weren't aligned in regards to what we needed. So from that first partnership, we actually pivoted to a new one, but we needed that first partnership to get the second one, if that made sense, right? We needed that proof of concept to say, hey, okay, like this, they're on to something, this will actually work, before we got the buy-in from our current partner now. And like you mentioned, they understand the vision, they understand our mission, and from a business perspective, it works. And that's the most important thing. Because in reality, like, especially as we continue to grow, like, we can partner with other distilleries now, and in the process of actually looking forward to building our own, but still we can partner with other distilleries now. But if we're not aligned with the mission and the goal, then it won't work.
And did you have a lot of other people that were in the industry that were willing to give you some guidance? I know one of the people that you sort of mentioned previously was Fawn Weaver, who themselves created Uncle Nearest, an entire line of whiskeys that honor the first Black master distiller, a name that still is not as popular as the brand that he helped create. But did you have a lot of other people that were able to at least give you guidance, maybe not so much in production, but just that's those steps that you needed to take?
Absolutely. Like, this industry has been amazing. Like, literally, I think once they realized that, hey, we're in this, like, we're committed to making this work, like, people came and provided, guidance, mentorship galore. And specifically Fawn Weaver, like, she got on the phone with us early and kind of gave us some tidbits that we've utilized to this day. And she's continuously been a mentor, not only for us at Greenwood, but other small minority-owned brands as well. So, and she's just one of many. But there's a community, in essence. Like, I think everybody understands how hard this business is. So once you're in this business, like, you want to help each other, you want to help others succeed, because the reality of it, like, the market is big enough for everybody to have a successful brand, and let's not step on each other's toes. And that was refreshing coming into the industry.
That's great to hear. And obviously you go into the industry and you say you've been a big whiskey fan for a long time. What did it take to finally find the recipes for the expressions that you wanted to release as Greenwood Whiskey?
So it took a lot of market research, is what I say. A lot of trial and error, and that means a lot of drinking. So it took a lot of that. And the thing is, like, I have 3 other co-founders, and all of us have a different palate. So finding something that all 4 of us could agree upon was a challenge within itself. Finding something anything that all 4 of us can agree on is a challenge, but nevertheless, when it came to the actual product, it was a process, and it's a process, honestly, that we're still going through. So we have 3 different SKUs on the shelf, but we're still tweaking stuff. We have stuff sitting in barrels now that we're adjusting and playing with. So we're still working to improve.
Gotcha. And let's talk about those SKUs. Let's talk about those expressions. What if you go to a shelf and you're looking for Greenwood whiskey, what can you expect to see?
So you're going to see our flagship Greenwood Whiskey Rye. And what that is, it's what we call a light rye. It's 51% rye, 44% corn, and the rest malted barley. And that's our green label. It's 84 proof. It's aged in charred American oak barrels for 4 years. So with that, we wanted to have the juice that was versatile enough for you to drink neat, put it on a rock with a good cigar, or you can also put it in a cocktail with it, not overpowering the cocktail, and you still have all the other flavors along with it. So that's our flagship. In addition to that, we have our celebration. So our celebration, this one is a little different. Our Greenwood Celebration is a caramel flavored whiskey. Okay. So this one is caramel flavored. It's 70 proof, caramel with hints of vanilla. I think what differentiates it is it's caramel forward on the nose, but like on the taste, on the palate, it's not as caramelly, right? You still understand you're drinking whiskey, you know? So I didn't want it just to have like, in essence, the flavor of liqueur. We wanted you to still have the taste and feel of whiskey, just with some caramel touch to it.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's our celebration. Additionally, we have our 1906, and our 1906 is something that we've done quarterly. Our Greenwood 1906, we named it 1906 to pay homage to the year that Black Wall Street was founded. And with this one, it's a 90 proof rye. So it's a 90 proof rye, aged 7 years in charred American oak. It's the mash bill is similar to our flagship, except it doesn't have the malted barley, so it's just rye and corn. So with this, it's more of a sipping whiskey, something that you probably won't see in a cocktail. It's something that more so that you would have neat or on the rock.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you're preparing different expressions, some that can be mixed and some that are specifically for more appreciative drinkers to sit and just drink by itself.
Absolutely. And how we look at it, we view it, there's no wrong way to drink whiskey, but we wanted to have, a couple of options for the various different whiskey drinkers. So however you enjoy your whiskey, we just ask that you just enjoy it responsibly.
Absolutely. Now with Greenwood, with the actual, the name, as you've gone out into the market and you've started to push the brand, you've pushed the expressions and you've pushed what the idea is, what kind of feedback do you generally get when you go to an event and you're able to present Greenwood whiskey? Does it sort of land as just a general whiskey, or do you know of people that sort of, I guess, understand a little bit of the backstory or are appreciative of being open to learning about you, about the vision that you had, about the history that you're representing?
Absolutely. It's the latter. So generally when we're at an event and we share Greenwood whiskey, the story is what gets people. It's a historical story that not many people are aware of. It has some level of awareness. So like that's intriguing within itself. And honestly, the story of us, like there's not too many founders, like we understand, like the minority founders in this industry is less than 3%. So when they see, a founder such as myself and my partners, that's intriguing as well to the group. And then on top of that, with the juice actually being good, like that's a feather in our hat. So that makes it great. And they're surprised that it's a rye. Like if I don't tell people in advance that, hey, this is the rye, they're always surprised, because what you hear, I've heard often is, hey, I don't drink rye. It's a little too much heat for me. A little too much burn.
Rough and spiky. And I can see that. So that is interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the biggest question we get is like, no, this can't be a rye. But so we're proud of it. We enjoy a rye, and we wanted to have it as a way to introduce others to not only whiskey, but rye whiskey as well.
I absolutely. And I find interesting the fact that you just mentioned that less than 3% still of spirit manufacturers in the U.S. are minority owned. Are you starting to see more people coming to you wanting your guidance for their vision and trying to open up?
Yeah, like we are. And I do my best to share any information I have, just like with those who came before us, share with me. So we are seeing it is growing, and it's a tough business. So any information I have that I can share with somebody to get them a leg up, I'm always willing to do that.
Awesome. So what do you have coming down the pipeline? Because I obviously looking on your website, it looks like the special Juneteenth edition, as absolutely gorgeous as that bottle is understandably sold out. What other expressions, what other sort of labels, what other sort of big things do you have coming?
So this will be the third year that we do an HBCU tour, HBCU homecoming tour.
Oh, really?
So, at HBCU universities, homecoming is the thing. You get all the alumni in. They come watch the football game, watch the band, probably watch the band more than the football game sometimes. But it's a great time. So we celebrate that. My partners are graduates from HBCUs. So we do a tour. So we go to the 6 college campuses for homecoming: Howard University, Hampton University, Spelman College, Morehouse College, Albany State, and South Carolina State. So we go to those universities and we partake and work with their alumni for their homecoming activities. We put on several different activations, whether it's tasting events, whether it's various different football tosses. It runs the gamut. But this year, in addition to doing that, we are launching, we're going to do a homecoming label. So it's going to be a label honoring HBCUs and honoring the festival and the celebration of homecoming. So that'll be launching. We'll have that out in September, just in time for college football.
That sounds awesome. And now Greenwood is currently available in some states. Florida technically is not one of them because it's not on the store shelves, but we still can get it here in the state of Florida, correct?
Absolutely. So we can ship online. So we ship, you go to our website and order any of our expressions and we'll send it directly to your door.
That is awesome. You can't ship to all 50 states, can you?
Not all 50 states. So there's a handful of states that we can't ship to. I think it's roughly 5. Unfortunately, I can't remember those off the top of my head, but the majority of states, we can definitely get product to.
That is fantastic. Definitely a great story. And now I'm really excited to try some of this. Definitely cannot wait. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I do appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. We appreciate that.
Like we said in the interview, it's not available in Florida on store shelves, but you can get it shipped. And it's definitely something I heartily encourage you do. I'm excited to see the HBCU label. That's going to be awesome. And there are some other things that might be coming in the future from them, so I'm going to be following them. Hopefully you will do the same. And definitely follow us on social media so you can see when we get our first taste of Greenwood Whiskey. We're going to switch gears a little bit and head over to what is going to be a bit of a teaser for the next couple of episodes of the Florida Beer Podcast, because we are heading to Gulfstream Brewing in downtown Fort Lauderdale. Actually, similar to Greenwood Whiskey, Gulfstream now has a spirit brand as well. Gulfstream is doing some bourbon along with their gin and vodka, which is currently available. I don't know if they're going to be doing a straight whiskey the way the Greenwood does, but I'm definitely excited to see what that looks like when it comes out. But the other thing that you can find at Gulfstream is Pizzeria Magaddino. I am a big fan of craft pizza at a brewery. Always makes me happy. And Pizzeria Magaddino is one of the absolute best that I've tried in the nation. It is a huge hit with my entire family. And we sat down with its owner and namesake, Tom Magaddino, to understand a little bit about what makes his pizza so special and having a ready-made audience for patrons in the tap room at Gulfstream. So Tom Magaddino with Pizzeria Magaddino. Enjoy. So I guess to start with, how did you get into pizza? Because it's a crowded field out there.
Yeah, so everyone's got like their favorite childhood memory of pizza for the most part. And there was one place I loved as a kid, and it turned into a hobby. I made pizza at my house, put an oven in my backyard, probably about 2013, 2014. And I just loved making pizza. I have a family, and it turned into like family pizza nights. And my wife just told me just to do it. I worked corporate for 15 years, and I just, as a whim, and just started making pizzas. And we opened up our first location in the Broward Convention Center in 2017.
Really?
Yeah, we did there, and we had actually both simultaneously. We had the convention center, and we were here at the same time. And it was just it was a good learning experience. And our first year, we made 50,000 pizzas.
That's amazing. How do you, I guess, ingredients, I would assume, would be sort of everything. Yeah. How long did it take before you opened even the Broward Convention Center location, when you decided, these are the kinds of ingredients that I'm looking for? These are what I want my pizzas to be.
It's definitely two things. Right? It's my childhood favorite pizza shop. So a lot of like what I do on top is that. And then it's Neapolitan as the base. So we do 00 flour, water, salt, yeast, what you would do traditionally in Italy. Our flour is made with 00 flour.
And what is 00 flour? I've never heard that before.
It's an Italian flour, but it's sifted. So the 00 comes from the diameter of which the flour is sifted. So it's just small holes, and so it's going to be softer. It's going to be a lighter grain wheat flour. It's non-GMO. It's not sprayed. The wheat comes from all over Europe, and it's just a really good, healthy flour. Then from there, we ferment our dough for a minimum of 48 hours. So over time, in the bread making process, sugar's developed, even though it's not one of our ingredients, but it just develops. So most pizza shops, which separates us from most, is they use it within 24 hours. And even in Italy, they use it within 24 hours as well. But they have things called biga, and they do smaller forms, and they add it to their dough to get that development of like a sourdough base. So we do ours like a full cold ferment for minimum, again, 48 hours. And the yeast breaks down all of the simple sugars in the bread making process, so your body doesn't have to do it. So it's kind of like a healthier pizza. You get a nice flavor profile with it. And then the top, the cheese sauce, is a lot of that comes from my favorite pizza shop as a kid. So it's a lot of like childhood memories, preferences that I like, and I just put it all together, made it work.
How difficult is it to source a lot of the ingredients that are at the quality that you want them to be, especially since there's so many out there?
Yeah, so it was easy at the beginning, and then when COVID happened, some things became a little scarce, so you had to like figure things out, come up with more alternatives, shorten the menu maybe a little bit more than you wanted to. But we made it work, and then as things kind of opened back up, it became easy again.
Awesome. So how did you get involved with Gulfstream? Because it's not just that you have a food truck parked out here. You literally have a section of the brewery.
We do.
Where you have basically everything that you need.
So we just had tabletop ovens when we first started, and we were a pop-up. So we would go to other breweries, and they were kind of new at the time. So they were going through less than their first year when we came. So at that point in time, they were having difficulty obtaining food trucks, or food trucks would drop out on them. So they were trying to make a name for themselves as well. And a lot of times it was, developing a client base. And I just pitched them on the idea of, let's try and do this as a full-time thing. The convention center was going to go through a major renovation project, which they're still going through. And I just wanted to have another place in case, things didn't work out there when they were going to shut down. And we just had a really good marriage and put it together.
That's amazing. The menu that you have, we'll go into the specific ingredients a little bit later on, but was a lot of that just brought in, or how much of that was communication with Gulfstream to find the right kind of pies that would go well with the beers that they generally have on tap here?
Yeah, so I don't really have much from them on their side of what they want. We just kind of make what we want, right? So we change our menu here monthly.
Really?
We do. So a lot of that is based on what we want to make or what's in season. So if there's like fresh vegetables that's seasonal, then we change our menu and modify it towards that. And a lot of it is just kind of what we want to make. So we have our staples that we don't change, and then we always rotate at least 3 to 5 pies a month and just kind of keep it fresh, but it's just like us trying to be creative.
It seems to be like your fans would, I guess, be frustrated with that, wanting, a certain special pie that they had that isn't on the menu anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of like beer, right? So if you look at their board, you go to any brewery, they'll have their staples, and then they're going to have the ones that they rotate. Most breweries are the same way. I find it great in a restaurant to do that because, A, you're going to get what's in season. So why not give something that's going to be as fresh as possible? Why would you get something out of season or a can or... I would just rather just give you the best of something.
How far in advance do you really have to plan a seasonal pie? Is that something that you just know it's almost July, it's time to start bringing this out, or does it really depend on what the market is?
We definitely have ones that we do every year. We bring ones back. Usually we have a twist to it. But, if you can go right now to, the Fresh from Florida website, and they list everything that's in season in Florida. So that's usually what we do. So we'll go from the Fresh from Florida website, see kind of what's going on, and that's usually how we plan our menu.
Do you ever have any requests from customers that end up being something that you did not think about, but it ended up being so good that you went ahead and just put it on the menu?
Yeah, we request all the time, and we do have an option on there where you can build your own pie. So that's always like a possibility, and we'll try it if it's something sounds pretty cool, for sure.
Now, one of the interesting things that you do have is a pizza class.
We do.
Can you describe that experience a little bit?
Yeah, so we do a pizza class here. We do it every Tuesday. What that is, and we do modify that as well. We range from making fresh mozzarella here, but typically we make a cool burrata salad, and it's seasonal. We'll include some sort of fresh from Florida fruit in that as well. We make a toasted truffle gnocchi right now. We have the pizza class, make your own cannoli. It includes a beer, and then we'll also make like an appetizer that's included in that, sometimes like a homemade ricotta cheese.
That's amazing. And do you get a lot of people that are repeat offenders to that, shall we say?
Yeah, we typically sell it out. We keep it small to make it kind of like intimate and quaint. It's usually 12 to 14 people. And it allows us to talk to people. Usually when I'm working the line, it's just we're going and we can't really look up as much. And it's just a great opportunity for me to like talk to people that I normally wouldn't get to talk to, or even just to say thank you, really.
Are there a lot of things that they learned, that people will learn in that class, that they didn't realize, they didn't understand about pizza and food in general?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a few pizza makers that are like home pizza makers, and it allows them to ask any question or trick that would allow them to do that. Or it's just like the home person that likes to come and buy pizza, they learn how to reheat pizza. It's kind of like questions go in 100 different directions. I kind of leave it open. We'll talk about like differences and what we do to what others do, and usually there's questions that come from that, and that's usually how it works.
Do you find a lot of people will go home and either, I guess, do you need a tabletop pizza oven to really make a good pizza?
No, that's what's kind of cool about this is when I first started, I didn't have one at my house. So I learned how to cook in a conventional oven. I learned how to cook in a frying pan, a normal grill. There's all different ways to make pizza, right? So that's the beauty of it. People, after the class, a lot of times they'll come and just buy dough from us, and then they'll go home and just put it together and make it.
Interesting. And the dough that you sell is the dough that's been able to ferment for 48 hours and so on?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I will ask this last question, something that I've personally had a lot of struggle with when I make my pizzas at home. It's like, when you do that, how do you keep it from being soggy when it's finished baking? What's the best thing to keep in mind?
All right. So how are you cooking it? What's your cooking method?
Usually on a pizza stone in an oven.
Okay. So, all right. So it's a lot of times it's the dough and what you're using and how you're stretching it if you're doing it a little bit too thin. A lot of times the most soggiest part of your pizza is going to be the center.
Absolutely.
Right? So a lot of times you want to go a little bit lighter in the center and have more on the outside. What happens is your sauce, your cheese, everything's going to run to the middle. What most people say, the difficulty is not cooking the top in a conventional oven, right? So what I would do if I have a stone, I'm going to get my stone to the hottest temperature of whatever your oven is, 550, for like 30 minutes, and then cook your pizza that way for about 3 minutes. Turn your oven off, switch to broil, and then cook the top down for the remaining like 3 to 4 minutes. But usually a good 6 minutes is what you want to cook in your pizza oven.
That's not a very lot of time, or a very long time to actually cook, but it seems like all the time is spent in the preheat and getting it ready.
Yeah, I mean, really a 6 minute mark, like for a regular, you're doing like a New York style, like what are you doing? Yeah?
Standard
Anything?
Pizza, round pizza with tomato sauce and cheese and white white. Yes.
So if you're cooking at your highest temperature in there, and if you kind of like do that, preheat your stone and then switch it, a good, like, you're looking at like 6 to 7 minutes max in your oven.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. I definitely am still hungry for some more pizza, but awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I do have one more question. I apologize.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
What question do you have?
So, I was hearing, when you cook your pizza, how do you make sure your toppings don't, overcook? Because this person over here has overcooked pizza before. Mm-hmm. And I mean, not with actual pizza dough, but with English muffins.
Oh.
He's overcooked it. gets very crispy at the edges.
Sometimes you just need to watch what you're cooking.
Okay.
Can't be distracted. Sometimes you
looking
just have to
at
do
you.
one thing at a time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So there we are with Tom. Like I said, his pizza is absolutely amazing, and I do believe that we shared a couple pies before we sat down and had this episode. Like I said, this is going to be a great introduction to Gulfstream Brewing, which is going to be the next couple of episodes on the Florida Beer Podcast. Obviously, you're going to have to go to Fort Lauderdale to try Tom Magaddino's pizza, but in almost every state in the country, you're able to go ahead and get some Greenwood Whiskey mailed to you. I definitely hope that sometime in the future you are able to try both of these amazing companies' particular products. As I've said before, next week we're going to be at Gulfstream Brewing, so definitely stick around and listen for that. If you want to know when that comes out, the best thing for you to do is to follow us on social media. We are at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, and Threads. We are at FL Beer Blog on Facebook, however. Email is floridabeerblog@gmail.com, and you can find us on the internet at floridabeerblog.com and floridabeerpodcast.com. And when you follow us on floridabeerpodcast.com, you'll also see that we are a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, a collection of amazing Florida-based podcasts made by and for people here in the Sunshine State, eating some amazing Magaddino pizza and sipping on some phenomenal Greenwood whiskey. I really cannot wait for that whiskey. And the pizza is phenomenal. Okay, back to work. You can find out more about the Florida Podcast Network at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Our podcast is available on every podcasting app of your choice, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We are at floridabeerpodcast.com. Pretty much everywhere you are. In fact, you can even ask your smart speaker to say, hello, smart speaker name, play the latest episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, and that's my voice that you'll be hearing almost immediately. If you're going to follow us on the podcasting app of your choice, please make sure to subscribe. If you're on YouTube, you can always subscribe and then hit that bell, and I'll give you a notification when the next episode is released. If you can leave a message, as you can do on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, please make sure to rate us and give us a nice 5-star review. It really does help get the word out about some amazing organizations and amazing businesses here in Florida and the United States as a whole. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich, field producer is Steve Piccola, executive producer for the Florida Podcast Network in Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Lagonier. This is David Butler, your host and author. We will be back next week in Fort Lauderdale for some Gulfstream Brewing goodness. Enjoy. Thank you so much, and drink Florida Craft.